I've got Steve Blank from LucasFilm and Mark Thompson from, what's the new studio again? Motive.
Motive Studios.
Yeah, we haven't started talking to you guys about Motive. This is the first kind of reveal of you guys as a company working on a huge game. Mark, where did you come from before you started working at EA and Motive?
I'd been at Ubisoft for a long time and worked on the Far Cry franchise.
Very cool, very cool. And Steve, you guys obviously with Lucasfilm had a lot of consultations with Electronic Arts about the Star Wars properties and how you guys are going to handle them. Battlefront, obviously, a massive success. But there was also a lot of expectation for more. And how did you guys at Lucasfilm kind of respond to the criticism, the vocal criticism that was out there?
Sure. I mean, there's, I think with any product you put out into the world and any content you put out into the world, there's always going to be feedback, some positive and some not so positive. But I think what we heard the fans, I think, both on both sides. And I don't want to speak too much to this because a lot of this was done, right, figuring out from the EA side with DICE and Criterion and Motive of how to properly approach that. But from a pure Star Wars perspective, we were really happy with the product for what it represented in terms of authenticity and being true to what Star Wars was, right? And really placing you in these environments, making you feel like you were in that world, making you feel like you were on Hoth or wherever, and it was really fantastic. So I think the criticism was heard and digested, and the right ways to approach that were really figured out by the studios, who came back to us and said, hey, this is how we want to move forward, and we're like, that's awesome.
We visited the DICE studio, and I got to tell you that right from the get-go, the first reveals, it was definitely being couched as, look, we wanted to throw as much as we could in, but we had constraints. We couldn't get every single thing in there. The challenge, of course, is this is a beloved brand that has had, previous iterations where everything but the kitchen sink was thrown in. When I look at this game, and I loved Battlefront 1, by the way, from DICE. I thought it was fantastic. But when I look at this game, it looks like it's been in development for longer than it's been in development. It looks like you guys have been working on this for a long time. How long have you guys all been cranking on Battlefront 2?
Well, like I said in the panel, Motive started working on this back when The Force Awakens was in theaters, and the studio was founded mid to late 2015, and Battlefront is the first thing that we've worked on as a studio. It's the reason that this is the first time we're talking to anyone about the studio and what we do, and specifically a game that we've worked on, is because we're so brand new. But I guess the difference is that when you work on a sequel, you get the benefit of everything you did, everything you learned, everything you created from the first game. And so you can iterate. You don't have to make everything from scratch. You don't have to have all of the, how is this going to work conversations. You don't have to develop partnerships because you already have fruitful and productive partnerships with the folks at Lucasfilm in the story group or in the art side or even in the game production side.
There's a shorthand.
Yeah, there is. We know how, each of us from both sides, we know how we're going to react. There are questions that we don't need to ask anymore because we already know the answers.
When I see the teams and the way that the teams are split between a Montreal team with a lot of experience, let's say in third-person action adventure titles like the Assassin's Creed franchise or first-person games like Far Cry, and I see the Criterion team with their Burnout experience and Need for Speed and stuff that they've worked on. I love their X-Wing VR thing last year, was incredible. But then I look at DICE, and they're three completely different environments with different mechanics, different backgrounds. The games that these different groups of people have made don't all seem to click together like a jigsaw puzzle. So mechanically, how is it all coming together? How is it all fitting? Is it going to feel like this same experience when you're playing the single-player game as when you're jumping into multiplayer?
Yeah, I mean, so the baseline that we use is, the project vision is driven by DICE, right? So this is a Motive making a Motive campaign. This is Motive helping DICE to realize their vision for Battlefront 2, which includes a campaign that Motive is working on. And one of the key pillars for us was about consistency and about coherency between the single player campaign and then the multiplayer experience. And so the second to second, controller based, how the game feels, what it's like to pick up and aim and fire a weapon, all of that is exactly the same. We haven't re-engineered that in single player.
Okay.
So the core gameplay experience, that second to second, minute to minute, is the same experience. And then everything else we do is informed and directed by the way that Battlefront plays as a game, because it isn't like other shooters, and also we're telling a Star Wars story. So that in turn helps. I think it helps become some of the connective tissue between the three studios working, because we all have this relationship, development partnership with LucasFilm.
Yes.
And so that becomes a kind of a connective tissue between the three studios. And just in general, I think distributed development is how games are going to be made from this point on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because teams get bigger and bigger, and games become more and more ambitious, and it's been happening for a long time. I think just more developers are being kind of more open about it, I guess.
Yeah. Steve, when you signed up for this gig, did you recognize how much you'd have to use your passport, and how? I mean, you basically got the James Bond deal out of this, didn't you? Your mission, if you choose to accept it, will take you to Stockholm for a little.
Yeah. It hasn't been bad. I mean, I will say one of the great things is like on the story side, we've been working very closely with Motive. And certainly going to Montreal and seeing them at their studios and getting to do that trip.
Yeah.
When it comes to DICE and Stockholm and Criterion in the UK, we actually, like in the multiplayer side, our internal Lucasfilm games production team deals with them even more than we do on a day-to-day basis. They're kind of those day-to-day contacts, and so they get very good use out of their passports to go there too, and they get to fly to a lot of those places. But it is pretty cool. It is nice, and like getting to do those trips and stuff just adds to this collaboration, right, and the ability to make sure and feel that all of these places are working together coherently under DICE's vision.
I guess all the decisions have to be funneled through you guys in some ways, right?
I mean, I wouldn't say every single decision ever comes through us, but when you're looking at sort of the core tenets of this and all of the Star Wars elements behind it, those definitely do come through us, and through the partnership, I think there's a sense of they want elements to come through us, right? Because they understand that we live and breathe Star Wars every single day, not just in this particular game, but across every platform and across all these stories and across all of these iterations. And so there is that constant communication of feedback of like, hey, actually, if you tweak this or you change this, or have you thought about adding this ship instead of that ship because it's going to be more relevant, or whatever that happens to be.
Yes.
They're open to that, and they're always looking to that type of feedback across all the studios because it helps make it feel more authentic. And we like giving that kind of feedback.
Well, we've all seen the DVD extra footage of George Lucas rubber stamping, concept art and stuff like that, and stuff going into production.
Sure.
He's not there anymore.
No, he's not.
So, I'm envisioning you guys have a Jedi Council now that has to kind of approve every sort of item that is Star Wars or not. It's like, how does it work? Is there one person now, or is it like 12?
I can't go too deep into sort of like the specifics of our process, but we do have the Lucasfilm story group, right? Is from the narrative perspective. We oversee all of that development and have our hands kind of split amongst the group in those different mediums. And then we do on our games production team side, those are guys who've been at LucasArts for, in total, decades and decades of work. And so they have that valuable experience where they can weigh in too before even stuff sometimes needs to come to us. But there's not a single rubber stamp, and it doesn't always come to one single person, right? It is even on our side internally at Lucasfilm, it's a collaborative experience of getting everyone's voice heard and making sure that the right people are weighing in depending on what it is.
Is there a Darth Vader over at Lucasfilm? Is there somebody that you guys are all just terrified to hear from?
Probably me.
No. I think the phrase, well, we're going to have to circle back and check and make sure that isn't in place somewhere else. I think that's...
That's the equivalent of Darth Vader.
It's very passive-aggressive. I love it. Okay, now, vehicles in this game obviously handled by a different team, the Criterion team, but, we love the way that they've handled vehicles for many years. Is it different now for Battlefront 2? Are we just, able to walk up to them and walk around them and jump into them, or are they power-ups like we've seen in the previous game?
So as Bernard alluded to, they're kind of DICE are looking at how the power-up system worked, because it had some challenges, right? They saw from usability and how players reacted. They would become focal points of a map that DICE didn't necessarily want to be a focal point of a map or the player experience, and it became a brief experience for the lucky few who managed to get to the token first.
Right.
And so DICE are looking at ways that they can step away from the token system and have something that is more resource-based.
Okay.
But at this point, we're not talking about what the resource is or how it works, other than we've heard the feedback, we've analyzed user behavior and are thinking about different ways to do it.
But likely we won't be seeing a snow speeder and running up and jumping into a snow speeder and taking off.
You'll be jumping on the back of a TomTom.
Okay, all right, good. That's what we can talk about right now. I love it. Now you mentioned that we're going to get all eras of the Star Wars universe, and does that include Rogue One? Are we going to see anything from the Rogue One kind of time frame?
I mean, we have in Battlefront 1.
Yes.
But again, the message now is that we're talking about the expansion across eras is prequels, original trilogy, and new trilogy in terms of the movie timelines.
Okay.
But we don't know what the future will hold.
Nothing from Rebels or Clone Wars that you can talk about right now.
No, nothing we can talk about now.
Okay, all right. It would be very cool, just saying, to see Battlefront versions of those characters. It'd be incredible. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about the story as pitched, I guess, and sort of worked out through the different ranks at both EA and at LucasFilm. Was it a challenge to kind of decide to frame this as an Empire First vision? We really don't get that often with Star Wars stories.
No, and I think that's why there was an appetite from every side to kind of explore this perspective, because we know from players and we know from as fans of Star Wars that we always get excited about new content and not just reliving the same stories that we've seen before. As fantastic as those movies are, I think certainly video game stories linked to a franchise have come a long way since Return of the Jedi on the NES, and so it's not just about recreating those movie experiences again at home. It's more about, I'm a fan of this franchise, and I want more of this content. I want different stories and new characters, and yes, it can take me to familiar locations and familiar events, but being able to see that from a new perspective is powerful, and we know that's what fans are looking for. And as developers, it's interesting for us to be able to break new ground and create new vehicles and weapons and characters and storylines and locations, and this is all great content to be able to get to play with, and the folks at Lucasfilm are excited about the same thing.
Awesome. We saw Harrison Ford step behind the mic for the first time in a Star Wars game with Lego Star Wars last year, and I'm curious if the long arm of Disney and Lucas is able to bring some of those voices that we know and love from the Star Wars universe into the game.
Well phrased question.
Yeah.
We're not at the point where we're really talking about who that sort of voice cast is and stuff yet. So that's information that we'll sort of come to at a later date. So there's nothing that I can really confirm or talk about right now.
Okay, cool. Talk about taking us from following the story of this special operative in the Imperial forces, but also jumping and playing as heroes. Like, what are you doing? Is it like a one of those time warp things from
Wayne's World?
From Wayne's World? Like, how are you guys doing?
Just Wayne and Garth actually come into the game.
It's a choice. You could do it. No, how are we going to do that?
I did not expect this question when I woke up this morning. So kudos for that. No, I mean, Star Wars has established cinematic language for how it transitions between the antagonist and the protagonist perspective. And so we'll be borrowing aesthetically from the way that the movies are, because video games are another visual medium of storytelling, right? So we'll be borrowing where it makes sense from the aesthetics of the movies. And so it was never really a big challenge. Like, it wasn't a question of how we do it, because it's so established in Star Wars storytelling that you can switch sides.
You have so many characters to pull from, even just sort of the core ones that we all expect.
Everyone's core and what they expect is different. That's what I'm learning about Star Wars fans.
So, like, clearly not every single character is in there, were there fights where blood happened at all? Like fist fights, yelling? Did anybody say outside, let's go? Did any of that happen?
I'd say that we have everyone on the team, everyone who's developing the game is a fan of Star Wars.
Yeah.
There's a huge crossover between game developers and Star Wars fans.
Right.
And some are more passionate than others. And everyone has, and like this is me learning about Star Wars fandom as well. Is
Right.
seeing that different people on the team, the way that they react, and the way that, because everyone has not just experience with or being a fan of Star Wars, everyone has an emotional connection, a
Absolutely.
strong emotional tie to this
Yeah.
to this experience, and it's Celebration is an incredible way to see that. I was at Celebration last year, and it just struck me how incredibly passionate people are, and how it's this big family event where generations of Star Wars fans are coming and dressing up and representing those characters, and everyone is passionate, and you can never please everyone.
So no pressure, is what you're saying. No pressure whatsoever. So when you're looking at a product like this from the Lucas side, and you're seeing the craft and the attention to detail, the storytelling prowess, does that inspire you guys to think, where could we go with this? Is it possible that we could transfer this to another medium? Is this a comic series? Is this a mini series, a movie?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the expansion of that and really leaning into the characters, that's exactly sort of how we think looking forward, right? That's sort of the new mandate that we're under within the story group, which is how do we extend that? How do we find the new stories to tell in mediums, and what are the appropriate stories to tell in each medium, right? And I think what we saw on the panel was we specifically did that in this case, where we found the backstory of Iden and Inferno Squad so compelling, and we knew that it's not something that could fit in the game because we wanted to start in a place where they were an established team. So we felt that was really ripe for exploring in a different medium, and so that's when we talked to our internal publishing team, and we reached out to Del Rey, and they brought Christie in, and we decided that this should be a novel, that exploring who that is should be a novel. And that's our point of view, is when these stories speak to us, when we see these great characters in these rich worlds, that's exactly when we want to start to reach out those fingers, tentacles, whatever weird way you want to describe it, and start telling more
tendrils.
Tendrils. That's a better word, I suppose. That's fine. And start bringing those characters into other places and telling cool stories.
Mark, I'm going to leave the last words for you because we got to wrap up here. What do you want to say to all the Battlefront fans out there that may have felt like they wanted more?
Well, I mean, Battlefront 2 is expanding across all eras. It's including more vehicles and locations and weapons than ever before. And speaking as a representative of Motive, I'm super excited about bringing a campaign to Battlefront.
Awesome. Guys, I cannot wait for this game. The trailer knocked my socks off, and hearing all of you guys talk, it sounds incredible, and it sounds like an incredibly complex story to get all of this together, so kudos. Just finish it and make it awesome, okay? All right? Okay?
Hey, thanks for checking out that video on our EPN channel. It's just one small part of the things that we make around here. So if you liked it, don't forget to check out some of our other vids and hit that subscribe button.